Hey everybody, it's Jeff on the town. We're in Rochester, Minnesota today, and I'm talking with George Beech from Autumn Ridge Church. George, hello first of all.
How are you doing, Jeff?
Thanks for joining me.
Yeah, thank you.
I'm great, thank you.
Yeah.
So, as we begin, tell me about George. Who is George?
I'm a Christian.
Okay.
Yeah, good to know that. About me, I'm married and have 2 lovely daughters and 4 grandkids. Mm-hmm. And I'm originally from Byron, the metropolis of Byron, if you've heard of that. Rochester's a little bit of a suburb of Byron. I grew up there, and then I left to go see the world, and I did that for 20 years. And then I came back here just in 2008.
Okay.
Yeah.
Where did you see?
Well, I was in the Army.
Okay.
So I traveled all over the world for that, including Germany and Korea, and I got a tour in Afghanistan as well for the Army, and then we did some government service and some contracting stuff out in Washington, D.C.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. So how did you get into ministry? It's not one of those things that you just kind of fall into. You have to do a little bit of prep for it. Why ministry?
Well, I did fall into it, but I didn't prep for it. My senior pastor, John Steer, asked me. We were sitting on these steps in Athens, Greece, as we were studying the footsteps of Paul, and crazy. And we're just sitting there and eating a gyro, and he goes, George, have you ever thought about being in ministry? And I said, no, I've never thought of that. It's never even occurred to me. But he said, I'm not offering you a job or anything, but maybe you should think about it. And he planted that seed. And so then through study and prayer and seeking wise counsel from others, it just turned into that. And so then I came to join the staff here at Autumn Ridge Church, and it's been wonderful.
So, and the place where Paul stood, no pressure at all.
Yeah.
Okay. So then, because you had a very good job prior to that, or maybe at that time, it was quite a change and quite a leap of faith, I'm assuming. So it wasn't just an overnight.
Right. I had 17 years of federal service. And at the time I was running screening operations for Transportation Security Administration for the state of Minnesota. And a big job, but a really good job where we were, we said every day that nobody gets hurt is a good day. And we were just there to protect the American people and flyers. And so love doing that, love working with all those folks. And so to pull me away from that, to go into something that was completely new was a bit of a leap of faith, but I took that step knowing that God had it. So,
Cool. So if you weren't as a kid going into ministry, what did you want to be as a kid?
Well, when I was a little kid, I wanted to fly jets, right, for the Air Force. That's what I was going to do. And I realized very early on that that I was not going to be able to fly jets because of my eyes. So instead, I jumped out of them for the Army. So I was airborne.
Really?
Yeah.
Wow. How many jumps?
I've got 8 jumps.
Okay.
Yeah. But I can spell airborne.
Okay. Cool. That's great. Well, so now I'm diverting from our original script because I've never jumped out of a plane.
Yeah.
Tell me what it's like, at least on your first jump, especially.
So jumping for the military is quite a bit different than jumping for civilians.
Okay.
And so the parachutes you're jumping at about 130 knots.
Okay.
And so the wind hits you pretty hard, and the chute comes out automatically.
Oh,
and
right.
You hit the ground pretty hard, like as if you were jumping off a 12-foot platform. That's the equivalent.
Okay.
And then I also jumped as a civilian, and using these nice big square parachutes, and you can brake and you can land walking.
Sure.
Very different. So if you get the choice, I would prefer the civilian type.
But is it quite a rush still?
It's amazing. Yeah, I think if you're an adrenaline junkie, that there's probably nothing greater than falling through the air at 150 miles an hour.
Cool.
Yeah.
So what is the best part, the coolest part about pastoring that you go home and you go, I have an awesome job?
I have a lot of those days, and it's usually when you have an interaction with one person who is just, they're struggling and they're wrestling with their faith, and they just don't know where they're going. And through the Holy Spirit, you're able just to lead them to the answers that they had been seeking. And the physical change and the emotional change and the spiritual change in them, just seeing that and watching other people grow I just cannot even explain it. It's so wonderful.
Okay, cool. Yeah. Now, when I was a kid, and you see on like television, like Little House on the Prairie, there was Reverend Alden. He's got the big hat, and he's a very stoic guy, and he rarely smiles and whatnot, And a misconception, I think, is that pastors are that way. And so far, you've been very not jolly, but you've
Different.
been humorous here. But pastors can ride Harleys and go to Star Wars and watch the Vikings, or in the case of last week's sermon, slam the Packers. And so, I mean, you're just normal guys, though.
Yeah.
Isn't that fair to say?
Oh, absolutely. And I think there are those pastors who are like that, and that is good because there are some people that appeals to. But we're humans just like everybody else, and we're broken and fallen people just like everybody else. But we've been called into this ministry to help lead people to a relationship with Christ. And that takes all types. And Paul, the Apostle Paul, knew that well when he would go and he would meet people where they were. And sometimes that was in crazy places. And Jesus did the same thing, right? And he went to where people who were not necessarily the people you think were religious. And he was really against the religious establishment. So our pastors are the same way. We have a bunch of pastors, and they all have their different appeal.
So now getting off of the pastor for a minute and just more on the personal side is, I know last summer you went to Boston, we had talked.
Yeah,
and
that's right.
You were all excited to go to a Red Sox game. Now, are you a Red Sox fan?
Or just no, I am a baseball fan.
Just a baseball, okay.
And the reason I like baseball is I call it a social sport. So you go there, and there's a lot of time where there's not a lot of action that's going on, and you get to spend time in conversation, in relationship with whoever you've come to the game with. And so I used to see, when we lived in D.C., we'd go see Baltimore Orioles play all the time. They're at Camden Yards, and we love watching the Twins, and we love just wherever we like to travel. We love to go see a ball game.
Now, are you able to follow all 162 games, or are you like, when you go, wait till the playoffs happen, and then they're...
So I like baseball, but I don't necessarily get so much into the teams as much, right? Because to me, it's a love of the sport itself, and it's a love of being in fellowship with whoever you're there with.
For me, because I can't watch baseball 162 games a year.
It's a lot.
But I think when you come down to like in the playoffs, every pitch is its own mini play, its own story. And I just love that part about baseball, especially like, Game 7 of the World Series. And, I love that part.
That's a great sport. Great sport.
Yeah. So we talked a little about baseball and some other things. What other hobbies do you do when you're not here?
Yeah, that's been a struggle for me. I like to have hobbies. So I like to ride motorcycle, as you mentioned, and we have a group here of Christians that ride together. And I like to golf. I'm not very good at it, but I do enjoy that time. And like the fellowship of baseball, golf is where you get to spend time in nature with people that you enjoy, and you go at a leisurely pace. And so I love it for that.
Yeah, it's fun though. I like that. It's like you said, social.
Yes.
And you can talk about stuff as long as you're not with that guy who goes, good shot. Good shot. And that's all you talk about the entire day.
Yeah, that's not been my practice at all. So we go to enjoy each other's company. And enjoy the weather and a little bit of the game.
Okay. Now, one more thing I do need to talk about here is the polar plunge.
Oh, yeah.
Because you've got an ad on Facebook and other stuff about, okay, now, first of all, we have viewers and I have friends who are in Mexico and places who've never even seen snow.
Oh, we've got our fair share of it.
Talk about the polar plunge.
It really doesn't make any kind of sense to do this. And that's why it's so fun, is they cut a hole in a lake. So there's ice on top. They cut a hole. There's water underneath. And we jump in there to raise money for Special Olympics Minnesota. And it's a privilege to be able to do that, and it's a lot of fun. And if you don't want to jump into the lake, you can always support somebody who is.
Now, how do we do that? Can you actually, if you give me your website, we'll post it on here. So
that sounds great. Yeah, and you can donate to Autumn Ridge Church, or we call it Autumn Fridge Church.
Sure. Yeah, because for those of you who don't know, the water is like 35 degrees.
It's just barely above freezing.
So it's freezing. Okay, so one last question. Sure. If you could do any job in the world that income is not a requirement, your skill or knowledge is not a requirement, but just something out there, what would you do?
I got to tell you, Jeff, this is going to throw you because I am ready to do whatever God calls me to do. And it doesn't even matter what that is or what the income is. I'm here to serve Him.
Cool. Yeah. Thank you. Yeah. George, it's been wonderful to talk to you today. Thank you for taking the time.
Thank you, Jeff.
Folks, I want to thank you for joining us for Jeff on the Town. Remember, like us on Facebook, like us on Twitter, this channel. Leave a comment below. Please be nice. And that's about it. Thanks for joining us for Jeff on the Town. We'll see you next time. Bye.
Let's take a walk down Main Street. We'll dance and we'll sing to the break of dawn all night long. We'll sing along to this joyous